Yeah, and my name is Jelena, and we're super excited for all of you guys to be here today. I'm a Facebook digital specialist on the Community Boost team. So I've personally been able to serve many of the organizations through strategy and direct Facebook ads creation. So I'm really excited to share the knowledge that we have to make sure that your organization can build and optimize strong campaigns to expand your impact.
Awesome. And so this is our mission above. You know, we really exist to empower social ventures, and to us, that's nonprofits changing the world. You know, we've been doing this work for 9 years, going on 10, and we're directly serving about 200 nonprofits currently, but we've served over 400 to 500 nonprofits in our lifetime. And so today, this is just kind of a brief agenda. We're just going to go over, you know, why are we talking about Facebook and Instagram? What is some data to back up why we find it such an important channel? We want to give you guys a real world case study, year-over-year data, and then we're going to be diving into kind of the meat of it all with our 6 tips really to drive more ROI in very, very specific manners and steps.
Yeah, so before we get into the specifics of those 6 tips, we want to understand why we as nonprofits are advertising on Facebook in the first place. And we have some statistics here for you guys. In 2021, 69% of adults in the United States use Facebook, and 84% of those people show their support for causes and issues that are important to them. Outside of the United States, Facebook and Instagram together reach 40% of the world's population and 75% of high income earners. Aside from statistics, I would say that the majority of us here today use Facebook and Instagram either on a personal or professional level. And I know we all felt it when Facebook was down for several hours the other day. So if you think you're not using Facebook, how did you feel when that happened? And the reach of these platforms is undeniable, and our audiences are actively using these platforms. We just need to know how to speak to them in a way that resonates. So in addition to the sheer amount of users on Facebook and Instagram, Facebook is the most used platform by time spent per user. On average, a single user will open the Facebook app 8 times per day and also spend 57 minutes per day, which is more than any other app, not just social media. And I know sometimes we think, oh, you know, younger demographics aren't on Facebook, people aren't on Facebook, but that's not true. The data is telling us otherwise. These people are on Facebook. And think of how many times that you personally use the Facebook app. With this tool, we have access to speak directly with our donors and make a huge impact. And this is the place to advertise for nonprofits, and it will continue to dominate that field. Outside of Facebook, we're seeing growth in online giving year after year. Even through the pandemic and turmoil in traditional fundraising, online giving not only held strong, but it grew by 12%, with nearly 30% of donors saying that social media is the communication tool that inspires them to give. Overall giving is still growing as well, and seeing a 4% increase over the last year, marking it the 6th consecutive year of growth. Donors are more willing to give than ever, and now is the time to increase marketing efforts to harness the power of online and paid social giving. With these statistics in mind, Facebook has announced that they've raised $5 billion on their platform giving tools alone. And if you're not familiar with the Facebook giving tools, it's the Facebook fundraisers, or some pages have the option to donate directly onto the page. So this doesn't include when somebody goes to your website and donates there. So it's $5 billion just directly on Facebook, which is really huge. And this trend is only accelerating with time. Facebook as a platform is crushing it. And when it comes to options for nonprofits, we're seeing growth in all aspects of giving. With the unprecedented access to target your audiences using the Facebook pixel and all of the different opportunities we have within Facebook, it's the best option to accelerate your growth and expand your impact by reaching the audiences that you want to reach. In addition to overall averages, Facebook and Instagram ads really work for our partners as well. We've managed over $2.6 million in ad spend and have a 2.4 times return on ad spend on an average across the accounts. At times, we've seen our return on ad spend as high as 58, and it can soar even higher when utilizing our tips and tricks to make these platforms work for your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love all that information you gave, Jelena. I think there's kind of like you said, a lot of people think that, you know, everyone's not on Facebook, but the data just doesn't lie. I mean, I'm kind of weird. I don't have an Instagram and I love Facebook. I'm on Facebook constantly. And we find that Facebook, and as we dive into the details a bit more, just has higher engagement levels. People watch videos longer. There's a lot more conversions that happen on Facebook. That doesn't mean that's not important to be on Instagram and other platforms, but we find that as a team, and we'll dive into this more, that's just really the biggest revenue driver. And so we always love to talk about case studies before we kind of dive into the tips and tricks. So this is one for eCan. We've been working with them for some time, and this is just going over year-over-year data. And so basically eCan as itself, if you want to go to the next one, they're really just raising awareness for this type of cancer. And what's cool is that ever since launching their first awareness month back in 2019, they become nationally recognized. So when they came to us, what their goals were for Facebook ads was to really drive registrations for their second annual virtual 5K. And their first one was back in 2020. And so what's cool about this is a lot of data here, but as you can see in 2020, we created about 4 different ad sets. We personally organize ad sets by interest audiences, which are different, right? Lookalikes versus remarketing people. And what's cool is that they only spent less than $400 on it, but our cost per result was about $34, which is a bit high. But in 2021, what's cool is that we were able to drop just the cost per result down to almost $10. And what's cool is that they did spend a bit more, but we were able to drive a lot more registrations. I'll see that in the next slide here. And so with 2020 run results, we were able to 5 times their return on ad spend from previously. And we had a 75% increase in just donations, people that didn't want to register, but instead donated. So again, like we said, they spent a little bit under $900. We were able to raise almost 10. We had about 89 registrations and 11 times return on their ad spend. And to the left here is just one of their examples of one of the various ads that we did. But what really changed through the years was not necessarily the ads themselves, but it was the warming up to the event that really helped us, which we call kind of preliminary awareness campaigns and gratitude. So basically throughout the year, we just ran evergreen campaigns, talking about the organization, what they do, sharing stories of impact, like you can see here to the right. And so when the event actually came up, we were just targeting people that were socially engaged, right, that have interacted with us beforehand. And we find that it's really important not to just target everyone and anyone asking to join, but to really warm up your audiences, give them an understanding of what you do before you actually, ask them for something. And what's cool is that even after the 5K, we find it so important to run gratitude campaigns, like you can see on the right here as well, and just thank people for joining, whether they donated or even joined the 5K. That's just always a part of our strategy and really helps us with, our next campaign or the next 5K the next year.
Yeah, so it's really cool to see this kind of real world example of how, the potential that Facebook has for us. So let's go ahead and dive into the 6 tips for how your organization can drive more return on investment this year. So the first tip that we recommend is adapting your strategy in response to iOS 14. And I hope most of you have heard of iOS 14. If you haven't, then you probably have not been on Facebook very much this year. But Facebook and Instagram got hit hard over the past few months with the latest iOS 14 changes. So for Apple, this was a really great update that gave customers, that front-facing privacy and security that they felt was very important for Apple. But for small businesses and nonprofits and people advertising on Facebook, this meant less trackable data and more work to get the most out of your current marketing funnel. And we know that Facebook and Instagram are the 2 most used platforms today. So it's really important to still find a way to reach these people, even with these privacy changes that are happening and continuing to happen. So here are some reasons why re-strategizing your marketing funnel is the first tip on our list. The first reason is because of Facebook updates. If you haven't been on this platform lately, congratulations. You've saved yourself a ton of learning and relearning and relearning again. Because for those that have been on Facebook, you know what it's been like and how much is constantly changing. I work in Facebook every single day, and sometimes I log on, I'm like, Facebook updated. I don't know where anything is anymore because it just switches one day. And so with iOS taking place, Facebook's algorithm and tracking systems are constantly changing. And so it's really important to rethink that strategy. Because of these updates and changes, you want to make sure that your current funnel and strategy are up to date with the current digital trends. And you want to create a multi-channel approach to your current funnel and this could really yield huge success for you. Adjusting and making changes based off of the information you'll learn today will help scale your marketing funnel to new heights. The third reason is audience building. So because audiences have new restrictions, adjustments are needed. Revisiting your current approach is really important to ensure that you're targeting the most relevant users to your nonprofit's mission and really the people that are going to drive your impact further. Lastly, reporting and finding better measurements for success is extremely important in re-strategizing. You want to learn your customer's journey from start to finish. Some of your current funnels might be focused on getting signups or specific event registrations, but you're likely seeing a drop-off in signups and donations. You might want to maybe update your reporting and adjust your approach to multi-channel reporting, because when people are being taken off site, we're losing that trackable data because of iOS 14 if they're with Apple. So here is a picture of our marketing funnel before iOS 14. So as you can see, the first step was to attract and send users to an organization's website where they can learn about your mission, your impact, how to get involved, and more. And then we want to push this user down the funnel and try to generate interaction from them. This interaction typically involves getting them to sign up for a newsletter or an email list, something along those lines. And once that happens, our goal is to retarget this user and show them our impact and what their contribution can do. We want to explain how their donation can help solve the problem or take a step in that direction. And finally, we ask them to give. If this is your current strategy and marketing funnel, please take down notes on the next slide, because like I said, with the iOS 14 changes, things need to change with your strategy. So here is the post iOS 14 funnel. It looks similar at first, but you might be able to spot the difference. So the first step here is to attract users on the platform and not to the website. The reason for this is because iOS 14 is making it harder to track people that are going to your website, and it's making it more difficult to retarget those people that did go to your website. So if we keep everyone on the platform, then we know we can retarget them, and we'll go into more of that later. The next step is to create. You want to create an interaction rather than generate an ask. We want to create conversations, likes, shares. The goal here is to get users actively engaged in your posts and your ads. This is the whole point of Facebook, is to have those conversations, that engagement, those discussions. And this really creates more loyalty and drives cheaper cost per acquisition and so much more. Next, we'll push the users down the funnel even further, and these users that are commenting and engaging on the platform, will push them to take an action. This action, again, will happen on platform, and this is where Facebook fundraisers and on Facebook donations come in handy. Lead generations become active, and messenger ads become your organization's new best friend. And again, we'll touch on more of those campaigns in detail a little bit later. So once we fill out this part of the funnel, we move on to donations and producing conversions. The difference here is that most of your audiences are retained right from the platform, and the majority of your funnel is built with people who are trackable and active on the channel that you're targeting them on in the first place. Because if they're not active on Facebook, then you're probably not going to have much luck to begin with. So here is a look at one of our clients that followed the post iOS 14 marketing funnel. And our first step was to attract people on the platform and reach as many of them as we possibly could. You can see here that we drove over 38,000 post engagements while reaching close to 28,000 people. And because we focused on engaging these users, our cost per acquisition was less than a penny. You can see that here on the left. Next, we started to focus on creating and generating interactions with these socially engaged users. You can see here the number of people that we reached, which is a little over 8,000. And this is the type of ad that these people saw over here on the right-hand side. So from the engagement, we funneled these users down the funnel a little bit more to focus on producing conversions. You can see that this campaign actually performed extremely well and generated a 19-time return on ad spend. But overall, the point here is to really look into your current marketing funnel, revisit your strategy, and just see how it stands up next to the latest updates and privacy changes.
And Jillian, it looks like a question popped up in the chat. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by attract users on the platform?
Yes. So attracting users on the platform is our ads are on Facebook, so we're sending ads to those top funnel audiences that aren't on our they don't know your organization yet. They're top funnel, they're brand new, and attracting them on platform would be with an engagement campaign, having a story of impact or something where they see the ad and they send a heart, or they want to share it, or they want to tag somebody, and just creating those conversations rather than in comparison to attracting them to your website would be an ad where they click on your ad and immediately are taken to your About Us page. Or we'll touch more on it later, but running a campaign that has a video that kind of shows your whole mission and story right in that one video, and just keeping them on platform to engage with you or to start following your Facebook page.
Awesome. Yeah, and please keep on putting in questions, and we'll make sure to get to them by the end as well. And so I think everything Jelena talked about is super great to understand, but as hopefully we're going through these tips, everything will make more sense. And so really our second one is integrating these updates and tracking through very specific requirements through Facebook. And so Jelena talked a lot about iOS 14 updates, but basically people are now having the option of opting out of data. If you've experienced this on your iPhone already, or like myself, I haven't updated my phone in some time, so I haven't. But basically now we're not able to see the full data that we used to with the Pixel, and it's delaying a lot of our reporting. And basically our attribution window, basically where we can see data, has changed from 28 days to 7 days. So we've had to get really just creative with how we're tracking, and of course how we're optimizing a lot of our campaigns. And to the right there, those are just two examples that you might see on the iPhone if it is updated on that requirement to ask to opt out of tracking. And it's important to note, this is not just on Facebook, it's on all applications. And so the first step that we definitely recommend is verifying your domain. And basically, in order to do this, if you want to go ahead and click Jelena, you want to look for in your business manager for this verification, this kind of green symbol here. And you can do this through your Facebook business setting. And you have to do this in order to run ads to your site. So if you haven't, this is definitely the first place to start. But essentially, you need to add a mega tag to the back end of your site to re-enable the tracking. Good thing to note is that domains can be added to more than one business manager. Let's say if you're working with a partner like us, or you're outsourcing some of this work, and you can see that on the right. The second item is aggravated events setup. So this basically is telling Facebook what we want to track with the Pixel and with other forms of tracking. So you can do this within your advanced manager. So again, you have to verify your domain first. And essentially we can only select 8, and we highly recommend prioritizing which events you want them to register first. And some of the ones that we do first are purchases, then maybe newsletter signups, and then event registrations. But again, this is really important for you to do within Facebook, so Facebook knows what to track and what to prioritize in that tracking. The third one that is quite new, and we're going to be talking about Conversions API, but the other form of tracking that we highly recommend you guys implementing is offline conversion tracking. So you can do this within your business settings, but basically you want to create an offline event, and it needs to be created before you even start your campaign. And essentially what you do is then after the campaign has run an event or a fundraising platform or a campaign, you essentially want to upload your customer list into Facebook, and it will match a lot of that data in which the Pixel wasn't able to. And so as you see below here, we were able to only get about $1,000 of website purchases, but with offline conversion tracking, we were able to pick up another $2.3 thousand that just was completely missed by the Pixel by people opting out of this data. And so please ask questions, but this is definitely something that we recommend. And so we know that's a lot of information. What was that? Okay, I thought someone asked something. But we know this is a lot of information, in terms of tracking changes, but this doesn't mean that conversions aren't happening on Facebook anymore. It's just changing how we're seeing overall data, and it's forcing us to look at more year over year and also revenue growth as well. And so it's just kind of forcing us to go kind of bigger picture, like I said, but audiences are still on Facebook, right? Nothing happened with them in terms of their activity. Just making these changes will help lead our optimizations.
Yeah, understanding these tracking changes and making sure you've got your ducks in a row is extremely important, especially as we're heading into year end, the biggest giving time for nonprofits and really for anybody. Everyone is on Facebook at this time, and so this is extremely, extremely important to make sure you're tracking correctly and getting your accurate results and not just leaving money and data on the table.
And one thing I wanted to add, Jelena, Isabel asked if, do we have data on iOS users versus Android, and does all of this iOS stuff affect Androids?
So iOS does not affect Androids, and the extent of the data that we've seen is we've looked, in our campaigns previously, majority of conversions and results were coming from iOS users. And now when you try and look at that breakdown, it all sorts into uncategorized because people that are on iOS devices, it's not even showing them, but you can still sometimes see the amount of people that were maybe Android users. And so those are the only ones that are actually showing up as being Android users. So everyone else kind of goes into an uncategorized because you don't really even have the capabilities to see who might be from iOS and who might be from an Android device.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. So the next tip that we have is tip number 3, which is all about the importance of using videos. Video matters, and if you're ready to truly get ahead, you need to start utilizing videos right away. And so here are the reasons why this is super, super important. The first is that video makes retargeting easier and more accurate. It also bypasses iOS 14 in a way and really allows you to retarget audiences with ease. It kind of touches back more to the socially engaged audiences that we talked about, and we'll dive into that as well. But videos also generate higher engagement. They catch the user's attention with sound and movement, which play a huge role in conveying your overall message. They can get your story across without having to write paragraphs on your ads and really drawing in users. Like I mentioned before, you could just have a quick short video with your story of impact, or if you have a specific like year-end campaign, just a short video getting your whole point across on platform without having to send somebody somewhere to read this whole big thing and potentially lose their attention. Audience building through segmentation. So this is super valuable because Facebook, gives us the opportunity to break out audiences of people that have watched your whole video, watched 3 seconds of your video, 10 seconds of your video, and obviously somebody that stayed for the whole video, they're going to be a warmer audience than somebody that, clicked on the video, didn't watch any of it. And it just gives you the opportunity to see how much time was spent actually engaging with that video. And it opens a ton of doors compared to static images as far as audience creation. The last reason is that people prefer to watch videos on mobile. And we know that about 98% of social media users are on mobile devices. I know that I personally never go on my personal Facebook on my computer. It's always on my phone. And it's super easy, but keeping in mind that since people are usually on their phone watching videos, if you have the option to do closed captioning, that's really important because a lot of people might be scrolling through but not having sound up. And I think Facebook does allow you to have that auto-populated closed captioning as well. So yeah, videos can open so many doors for your campaigns and take your nonprofit to the moon. You can see here, even if you don't have the capabilities for a full video, just a quick graphic that has movement is a little bit disruption in the timeline to take the focus away and bring the focus to your ad. So let's dive in and see how one of our partners utilized video to generate some pretty awesome results. One statement that holds true is that numbers never lie, they don't lie. We can sit here today and talk about all these different types of strategies, but at the end of the day, you're gonna know if they worked out or not when you go and test them. So in this slide, you can clearly see the number of signups from our video ad versus our static image ad. You can also notice something interesting about the number of people we reached. The video reached way less people, but drove more results. Why is that? because video tells a better story. It engages users right away, and it's more likely to find people looking for your mission. Facebook has its own algorithm and it has its own optimizations where it's showing your ads to the right people. And those stronger audiences are being captured by your ads. On the other hand, our static image reached so many more people and drove less results. It's a lot harder to get people to just stop and read something. And these static images are not distracting enough to disrupt someone that's like maybe scrolling through funny videos on their timeline. Images just aren't going to get the attention off of those videos and onto your ad that you need to drive results. In this next slide, you can see that there is a 65% difference between video ads cost per result compared to the static image, and overall a 71% difference in conversions. Just imagine where this will be once we reach 8,000 users that are actually looking for your mission rather than just mindlessly scrolling. By utilizing our first 3 steps, you can already see how we're able to put these pieces together to drive some pretty amazing engagement and some terrific conversions. By using video, we can retarget additional users who watched 50% of our video and show them something more relevant, or we can reach them with the other half of the video that they might have missed. Maybe the most important piece of your video was at the end and they didn't get to see it, but you know exactly how much or how many people watched only 50% of it. So you can make a new video that has, that last 50% and retarget to those people if you wanted to. And people that watched 100% of our videos are a much smaller audience, but they're also a much warmer audience because they stayed for the whole thing. They know your mission, they know your story. So, that gives us a really awesome audience to retarget. And if you're not currently utilizing video, you could potentially be leaving money on the table. And also your frequency could be pretty high by just using a static image, as we saw in the last video or in the last slide.
Angelina, a couple of questions that people had. Megan was asking, can you use animation on what would typically be a stagnant image to create a video effect? Can you talk about maybe accessible ways to create these videos if organizations don't have this budget?
Yeah. So I know, a ton of people don't have the opportunity to create videos, and that's totally fine because with tools like Canva and even Facebook allows you to create slideshows. Even in Facebook, you can use images to create slideshows and add text on those images, and those count as a video in Facebook, and you can still see how much of it people watched. Animations, yes, that works as well. Just to disrupt attention from somebody to see it moving, as we saw on the slide with the rocket ship kind of moving through the sky. It's just more, your focus is drawn to it easier and quicker. So yeah, there are many tools and ways to kind of create video without actually having to film a full video.
Awesome. And what length of video do you recommend?
So we recommend, over 15 seconds, but not typically longer than a minute. You want it to be enough time to where you're actually knowing if they're tuned into it. For example, if somebody only watches 3 seconds, that really tells you, I watched it, I stopped in the ad, I'm bored already, so I moved on. So that's not a really strong audience. So you want it to be long enough to tell if it captured people's attention. So I would say over 15, but less than 60 seconds.
Okay. And a question that Courtney Carter asked a little bit ago, it's more about donations in Facebook. So do we recommend using the Facebook donation button over offline donation pages? Because obviously we're not able to see the full data on Facebook, but can you talk a little bit about that? And I know we'll go into it a little bit more too.
Yeah, so there's actually a newer feature on Facebook, not the donation button specifically, but it's newer in ad creation where it's allowing you to create a donation campaign where, in a normal conversion campaign, our ads would send people to the website to donate there. But it's rolling out a new option to where you can send people, they click on your ad and Facebook Pay pops up for them to donate right there. This is only possible if you have access to the donation button and you have those charitable giving tools. And so that's really valuable and something that we've just started testing out because I think we just started seeing it in some of our accounts within the past week. So that's brand new. And then we'll dive into it a little bit more as well, but Facebook fundraisers, as far as donations too, are really valuable for on-platform donations.
Okay. Yeah, and obviously, organizations want this donor information to steward them and to, maintain them. But there are different options, like Jelena said, some that are very new that still have that full information. But ideally, we are getting them off onto your site and keeping them on Facebook. And we'll kind of talk about that reason. And so really the fourth tip is lead generation. So we're going to be going into a couple different types of lead generation that is possible within Facebook. And so a couple of the following are the first one are improved instant forms. So 88% of users are on mobile devices, like Jelena has said. And now instant forms are basically a full screen experience that I'll kind of talk about different ways to go about it, like volunteer forms or events. The second one is messenger ads. So basically you can qualify leads through a messenger flow, and I'll talk about that as well. And then the last two are click to call, which are cool for organizations that are hoping to schedule, appointments or something like that. And then segmented lead forms, where we can set up multiple forms and then just directly upload it into your email list, which is pretty cool. And so to dive into all of these, the first one is instant forms. So on your left here, this is for a newsletter campaign. So basically this is all just on platform, which is cool. And we're still getting that full information where it's just less kind of actions for that person to take. And what's cool is that once we implemented this, we got almost double the amount of results just from users not hopping off of Facebook. And again, Facebook is kind of rewarding on-site kind of actions. The next one is messenger leads. So this is really good for volunteering options where you can just ask that person if they even live in your area to even like perform the activities that you need them to do. And if they don't, then they can be redirected to your website. This is all animated, automated. And so you guys can obviously adjust this as you need fit. The third is click to call and segmented forms. So basically, these are just great options, again, for people that are looking to schedule appointments where they can just call directly by clicking on the call now, and it will do it automatically on their phone. And, really why lead generation works is that we keep on talking about it. Just Facebook, with all of these updates, are favoring the Facebook algorithm, which is basically on platform. And we really want to make sure that people are staying here. It ultimately does lower the cost of our results, which is always ideal, right? We're spending money on these ads. And some other points is that we really don't lose a lot of this data that is extremely important in our other campaigns and how we're retargeting people. And I saw a question about retargeting. It's basically taking an audience that has engaged and sending them another ad. Like I guarantee everyone sees on their platforms, the same companies over and over again. And then what's cool about these lead generation forms is that you can directly connect it to your CRM, where sometimes with the donation platform in the past, we're losing that data, but now, there's different ways to directly connect it to your CRM. And to answer your question, you guys are getting the recording of this, don't worry.
Awesome. Yeah, so tip number 5 has kind of been built up and talked about and touched on based on some of the previous tips and just everything that we've been talking about today. But keeping users on platform is tip number 5. And this has always been important, but especially in 2021. And like I said, with the post iOS 14 strategies that we're working on. So let's dive into some benefits as to why we want to keep users on platform. So the first reason is because Facebook audiences are easy to target and it's more accurate to target with these changes. So these audiences include people that have viewed your videos, liked your ads, sent a message to your page, filled out a lead gen form, and more. And so you won't see a drop off in these audiences compared to the website remarketing audiences that may have gotten that pop up to opt out of tracking. The next reason is because growing your following and engagement builds social trust with your audiences by letting them know that you're active. Targeting users that are on social media increases your reach and impressions because Facebook's algorithm is more likely to target these socially active users with your ad and post. And lastly, keeping users on the platform is extremely valuable because it allows you to bring in conversions at overall a lower cost per acquisition. And this is because Facebook's algorithm is favoring people that have already engaged with your content. And it's really ranking them as somebody who has had a positive experience viewing your ads and posts. So overall, it gives you a lower cost per acquisition. So 88% of donors say that they will give again through Facebook's giving tools. Again, that involves, donating directly on a Facebook page, donating to a Facebook fundraiser, and just through those tools directly on Facebook. So this should motivate you right away to keep your users on the platform. But if it doesn't, let's take a look at some of these examples. So these examples that we're going to walk you through are all using different budgets, so you can really see how this strategy works for all types of campaigns. So we'll start at the bottom of the beanstalk. So this is a smaller audience, and here we can see how our socially engaged audience outperformed a website remarketing audience. And as we get a little higher, we can see that socially engaged audiences are outperforming a very strong interest audience, which makes sense. These are our warmer audiences. And then with a little more budget, you can see socially engaged audiences are outperforming previous donors even. There's about a $600 difference here with these socially engaged users compared to the people that have previously donated. And then at the top, you can see these socially engaged audiences outperforming a stacked list of very warm audiences. So this is, including previous donors and probably web remarketing and anyone that's, those pixel remarketing people that you're gathering as well. So again, numbers don't lie and data doesn't lie. So socially engaged users are already on the platform and they've already interacted, they've already gone through the funnel, and Facebook can easily find and serve them your ad because they know that these people are active on Facebook. And naturally, this increases your probability of generating donations and other conversions. So now we're going to walk through some of our favorite ways to keep users on platform and really keep them engaged. So the first way that I have here is through Facebook fundraisers. And I don't know if you've ever been on Facebook around the time of your birthday and received a notification, to start a fundraiser for an organization. Happy birthday, support one of these organizations with a fundraiser and call on your network. So Facebook is already sending people a message a few weeks before their birthday. Running a campaign around this and just beating Facebook to the punch creates a stronger impact, and it makes sure that your organization is the one that people are starting birthday fundraisers for. And like we mentioned before, Facebook and Instagram are continuing to grow, and you can see here the types of different fundraisers that can be created, from creating a fundraiser on your nonprofit's page, personal fundraisers, birthday fundraisers. But there's also the newer Facebook feature that I touched on that has rolled out for the on Facebook donation campaign, which is also going to be super valuable and is going to be included in these Facebook giving tools. So that's just really important and valuable. The next way that we like to keep users on platform is through lead generation, which Janae did touch on a little bit. And this has so many benefits because it captures first party data almost instantly with minimal clicks. And it has, it's an instant lead capture, that information that you need right away. So this is a great tool to really get the first party info that you need, and also to generate that engagement while naturally driving your own cost per acquisition. Like I said, the people that sign up for your lead gen ads or fill out the lead gen form on your ads, they also go into that socially engaged audience because they're engaging with your ads. So as we set our sights to the sky, let's not forget to focus our attention on platform and really utilize the tools that Facebook and Instagram have provided for us to drive these conversions and drive our impact further.
Awesome. And before we move on, Jelena, someone asked is it possible to get donor data from fundraisers? Because I know this is a big issue with a lot of organizations. So can you talk about that? And then talk a little bit more about that new feature that literally just rolled out, you said last week.
Yeah. So for Facebook fundraisers, you can pull the data of anyone that has created a Facebook fundraisers. I believe on your Facebook page, there's a section for publishing tools. I think it's in publishing tools, and then donations and transaction reports, and you can pull those reports, but you have to make sure that you are approved for charitable giving tools. If you were to do a Facebook or a Google search on Facebook for Facebook charitable tools, you'll know if your organization has been applied or approved for that or not. And I would recommend doing that right away because it takes about 2 weeks. If you have the opportunity to have people create fundraisers for you, then you are approved there and you're good to go. So yeah, you can pull that data. And then for the on Facebook donation, I wish I had like pulled a screenshot, but essentially you are creating a campaign, a conversion campaign with the conversion objective. And then instead there's a section at the ad set level where you're creating your audiences, where you can select where to send them. The top option is always website, and it was automatically website with the pixel attached. There's an option below that on some pages now that says on Facebook donations, I believe is what it says, or just Facebook donations. And if you select that, it's not attached to your pixel at all. And the when someone clicks on your ad, it automatically allows them to donate right on Facebook. And you should be able to pull that data the same way that you pull anyone that like previously donates to your page, using the donate button. But this is just a way to like put the ad spend behind that and make it happen on Facebook. Another really cool thing about that we've seen so far is that you can create audiences of people that have previously donated to your page and that have started Facebook fundraisers. So you can create a specific audience to target people that have previously created a fundraiser for your page and retarget them. And that's really awesome and really valuable, especially if you've previously ran those on Facebook fundraisers that we've talked about. Yeah.
Okay. And I think there's a little bit confusion of like the email, right? Because that's what organizations want. So you're saying that it is possible if through birthday fundraisers, if you're verified as a charitable giving, is that what you're saying, Jelena?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you basically go through this.
If you were to search, if you search charitable giving tools, it'll tell you if your organization's approved or not, if you're logged in as your organization. You just need to be approved to have those charitable giving tool access to those tools. And then you can save that data of those people, I believe.
Okay. And another quick question. Christopher asked about integrations. Do you need to attach another account to collect donations through Facebook like Stripe? Or does Facebook do it all for us and they just send us the money? Or do we have to connect our bank account? How does it work?
Facebook does it. I haven't gone through the process of connecting anything. But if you're running ads, your information's on there, obviously for Facebook to spend. In the past, when people don't have the charitable giving set up, I know that there's a workaround where you do it through a third party nonprofit giving, and they send a check, but there was no data for any of the people that donated. And it's different for if they donated directly to your page, but I'm not 100% sure on if you need to connect your own or a Stripe or a third party there.
Okay. And I think something that a couple of people are saying is that a lot of them are approved for charitable giving, but they still don't get this donor information. Can you talk about where they get that email address? Because you mentioned it was somewhere within their page, right?
Yeah, so I think if you were to go to your page and go to your settings on the left-hand side, and the left-hand side of your setting, there's publishing tools, or it might just go straight to donations, because I know Facebook has updated where you don't necessarily need to go to publishing tools. You can go into your donation settings and then you can pull a transaction report. And I think it should have all of that data. If it doesn't, then I don't think then it might not release that privacy of the emails. But I know that's where you would pull any of the data that you would get from those people.
Okay. Yeah. And we know in the past that it's typically not possible. So yeah, I just thought that it might be a good place for people to start out. And if you can't, then that's just the kind of caveat of Facebook. But again, with this new tool that Jelena's talked about a couple of times, we are able to get that information because they're filling out everything on the form. So that just might be something that we have to pivot to. And so the sixth tip that we're going to dive into is CAPI, Conversion API. And so basically what CAPI is a tool paired with the pixel to collect all of the data that we're losing. And really the benefits of it is that we're just able to improve performance measure. It's able to understand everything a lot better. And so, why is CAPI important? Essentially, it tracks the data on your site that, again, the pixel does not pick up anymore, like their name, phone number, and email. By combining the pixel data, again, with the kind of CAPI tracking that we're able to have, we're just able to have a more accurate picture. And in some cases, a lot of our results are doubled because, again, the pixel is dropping quite a bit of this. And so, this is just an example of one of our campaigns that we did where the pixel itself only picked up about 54 events. But when we had conversion API tracking, we completely missed almost 79, almost 80 events that happened. And so the only caveat of kind of CAPI is that it is in beta right now. So not every platform actually integrates with it. So if you've tried internally, it's okay if you guys haven't been able to set it up. And the top platforms that are really integrating with this are FundraiseUp and Classy as donor CRM. So just know that. And what if you guys don't use that? That's perfectly okay. We highly recommend using offline conversion tracking in replacement of CAPI.
Okay, awesome. So I know that was a lot of information and probably went pretty quickly in a lot of areas. So we'll do a quick recap and we'll have time for questions, and then you will also have access to this recording. But the first was to adjust your strategy for the iOS 14 changes, focus on building your socially engaged funnel. The next tip was to integrate for those iOS 14 updates. Make sure all of your ducks are in a row and that you do those action items that we talk about with the aggregated event setup and the domain verification and offline events. You really want to have the best results, and those things are going to be very important to drive those. Third, got to have video if you want to go to space. So take your results to the moon by having videos, graphics, GIFs, as you can see here, lots of moving things. Next, the lead gen is the future. So remove the unnecessary clicks and steps, make it super simple for someone to give you their information right on Facebook. A fifth tip, stay on platform. You've seen the impact and you've seen the ways that we can keep people on platform. So be sure to include that in your strategy. And then lastly, CAPI. Cool. So we will have time for Q&A. Did you want to break, Karen, for Q&A now, or should we jump into the audit?
Yeah, I think there's a couple questions still in the chat that we can go ahead and take now. And so we can go through that, and then we'll dive into that audit as well, and more time for questions then. But I think somebody asked about how do you target users by birthday? I think that came up when you were talking about like the birthday fundraiser specifically.
Yeah. So in Facebook at the ad set level, we, sometimes we do interests with it, but typically if you have a big enough following or big enough supporters, you would be targeting your stacked supporter list, your Facebook followers, and then at the interest level for detailed targeting, you can target upcoming birthday, which is people that have a birthday within the next 7 days. And then you can also target birthdays by month. So you can target people that have a birthday in August, birthday in September, birthday in October.
Awesome. And then another question, do you have any info about the Giving Tuesday Facebook donation match?
I do not.
Yeah, so we don't have exact numbers. They don't really release that to agencies like us that are partners, but we have found that although it sounds great, a lot of that matching happens within like a couple of hours. It's very hard to secure that matching. So we don't recommend that organizations kind of depend on that match, but we highly recommend having a match if possible throughout your campaigns, because people just like to know that their donation is doubled or is matched up to a certain amount. So again, we wouldn't depend on the Facebook matching because it typically does go, I think last year was like within 2 hours. It was something crazy, but we don't know exactly how much they're going to match this year. Hopefully more, but I guess we'll find out.
Awesome. And then someone said, our audience is more on Instagram. Are you going to address any different tips for that specific platform?
We're not going to dive in too deeply to Instagram, but one thing that I've found, because we also run ads on Instagram, obviously, I've found it's really, really important to make sure your creative you have specific creative for if you're running ads on stories compared to if you're not. And also because when you build ads on Facebook, you know, they're all in the same spot. And if you don't edit each placement, they're all going to be the exact same. But Facebook ads look different than Instagram ads. Instagram allows less text before it says see more, before it has like the button you have to click to expand your text. And the headline on Instagram is below the image with the text below it, while the text is above the image in Facebook. So it's really important just to make sure that that creation is looking differently. And then also, you know, I think younger demographics are typically on Instagram. So just really important, as always, whether you're running ads on Instagram or on Facebook, to make sure that you're speaking to the demographic that you're targeting and the audience that you're targeting. But I would say that the most important aspect for Facebook is making sure that, or for Instagram, is making sure that your creative matches those different placements on Instagram, specifically stories or reels if you're running ads on reels. And I know that there is a newer-ish Instagram donation button option and Instagram fundraiser option, which we have not explored a ton, but I imagine is super valuable if that's where a large part of your audience is. And I think businesses and nonprofits should have the ability to do the donations on Facebook or on Instagram, sorry.
Awesome. And I think something going back to our videos that we were talking about, that you were talking about, Jelena, Christopher asked, would it be beneficial to manually dictate placements when using video?
For stories, yes, because Facebook obviously has stories as well. If we don't have specific creative for a story, or if, say, our image is horizontal rather than vertical, then we typically go in and do the manual placements and just don't include it on stories, because it's just going to look bad if you don't have that specific creative for stories. So yeah, for videos, if you do have the certain ratio, I would, you know, make sure it matches for all the placements that you're wanting to run on. And if not, then to turn off those ones, or, you know, replace it with an image if you still want to run it on those placements, but you don't have the video capabilities for that placement.
Okay. And still in the realm of video, someone asked, when adding a video, what length of text content do you recommend on the post? Or should they just upload a video without any context? Like the ad copy, I think is what they're asking.
For ad copy on a video, I would definitely still have like your in-text call to action, whether that's like learn more about our mission, or, you know, watch this story of impact and see how, you know, Sarah's life was impacted by this. So I would still have that in-text call to action with the video, just so people kind of can know what they're going to watch, but not like a full length explanation, and keeping in mind that it's on mobile. So you definitely want it to be kind of short and sweet.
Sweet. And I think the last question here was from Elizabeth earlier. And how do we set up Facebook ads to track donations amount, right? Right now they can see the number of donations, but not the actual amounts. And I know this is very complicated with different CRMs. So Jelena, if you can talk into kind of that complex world just a little bit.
For value tracking, if they're donating on your website, then that has to be, you know, the value tracking has to be set up through GTM or through their donation platform that they're using, which is, you know, definitely something that our team does and can handle. It has to do with the pixel a little bit, but you can't typically, or you can't always pull value with just the pixel. You sometimes need to go in there with Google Tag Manager and get that set up.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, let's keep on going, Karen, and then we'll still have a section for questions at the end. But I know right now, Jelena is going to dive into audits. What do we look for, and what can you guys start looking for within your ads if you actively are running them right now?
Yeah. So we have a full audit scorecard, but we're going to focus just on the audience targeting section, because that's specifically important, as we've covered, you know, with these changes, to make sure that you're when you're building your campaigns, you want to be crafting your message to the people that you're targeting. Because if you're not reaching the right audience with your language, then you won't get the results that you're looking for. So knowing the balance between targeting new users to build your funnel versus warmer and remarketing socially engaged audiences can take your campaigns to the next level and set baseline metrics to help guide your optimizations. So the first aspect to taking into consideration is looking at what your ads are actually saying. Take yourself out of, somebody that's obviously super familiar with your organization because you're writing the ads, and put yourself into the shoes of somebody in your target audience. Do your ads make sense? If you think your message is relevant to those you're targeting and would make sense to anyone within that audience, that's great. If not, you really want to examine what could make your targeting more accurate. Next, we want to look at targeting new users on Facebook and making sure that we're speaking to them correctly. Finding new users helps with overall brand awareness and really builds our socially engaged audiences, remarketing audiences, and other warm audiences so that we can hit them with the harder asks down the line. And one thing to note here is when determining your new audiences, you want to make sure that you're presenting them with accessible language that introduces your organization to someone who's most likely not familiar with your mission, because these are probably going to be people at the top of the funnel. So make a note of what could be adjusted to align your messaging with those that you're reaching for the new users. And next, we need to make sure that any past donor lists, newsletter lists, and any relevant past participant information gets loaded into Ads Manager correctly. This is important for ads targeting, but also for offline conversions. So you want to make sure to upload those in both places. Offline conversions is done in Events Manager, and then the list is done at the ad set level in the audience creation. So you can upload your list within the custom audiences section, and it's a great way to tailor your ads to those who have participated, donated, or opted in with your organization before, or if you're running those gratitude campaigns to thank the people that did support you or donate to your latest endeavor. And so making sure that those lists are uploaded without errors is an important piece of a successful campaign.
And quick question there, Jelena, someone asked CVS, is that the best way, or I guess format of listing?
Yeah, CVS is best, and then also you can also copy and paste it directly in if you just copy and paste the whole Excel sheet. I typically haven't had any issues with either of those ways, but after that section, after you've uploaded it, it asks you to like match the rows to, this is the emails. Obviously emails are the most important. You don't necessarily need first and last name to be matched in there, but email is very important for uploading those lists. Cool. So for those not familiar with lookalike audiences, I think we did have a question about lookalike audiences earlier, but this is a great tool to utilize within Ads Manager. And it gives you the ability to create an audience on Facebook that is in some way similar to an existing list, or similar to your followers, or similar to a custom audience. And a common lookalike to test is based off of an existing donor or mailing list, since Facebook can target people who are in some way similar to a user who actively participated with your organization in the past. And the key to lookalike audiences is to not stack too many into a singular ad set, so that the data won't mix too much, and to narrow your lookalike audiences with relevant interests like engaged shoppers, or other interests depending on your goal, so that Facebook can more accurately find the users more likely to take a desired action. Say, for example, you want to find people that are going to sign a animal rights petition for you. So maybe you'd be using a lookalike audience, and then you'd narrow it in the interests to be a little bit more specific for somebody that's interested in animal rights activism, or something along those lines. Hand in hand with lookalike audiences, we have exclusions. So while exclusions don't need to happen in every single ad set or campaign, they can be important to make sure that you're not flooding the people that have already taken the action that you want to be taken with your ads. For example, if you're running a lead gen campaign for newsletter subscribers, you would probably want to exclude your current email list in the ad sets so that you're not spending budget on people that you already have in your CRM. So exclusions can also be important in general lookalike audiences, especially if you're geo-targeting in a specific area that might be smaller and you have a lookalike audience, you can exclude the initial list that the lookalike was created off of. And then next we have interest audiences, and interest audiences are one of the most common ways to find new users and to narrow your audiences and build your top funnel while exploring what users will resonate most with your message and the goal of your campaign. So these are some of our favorite audiences to build because of there's so many options on Facebook. There are people, you know, who already love your mission. We just have to find them and introduce them to your organization specifically. So that's really valuable and is really great, especially for targeting new users. So when it comes to building an interest, you want to think through who you're really looking for on Facebook. For example, for education-based organizations, it could be parents or teachers, or it could also be geo-targeted interests of those who are interested in community issues, etc. So there's no way to ensure that your interests will work, but by A/B testing and crafting ads to speak to the audiences that you are trying to target, you can get a better feel for what's working and what's not. And you also don't want these to be too broad because you want them to be a little bit more specific. And so our rule of thumb, we typically like to start with it between 100 and 3,000 users, just so you know you're reaching, you're not spending too much money on a diluted audience that might not be resonating with your message. So that way we won't drive up frequency with an audience that's too small. Were you going to ask a question, Janae?
Yeah, well, someone just asked, and maybe you just mentioned it, but what is the minimum size list that you recommend basing a lookalike audience list off of?
Yeah, so for a size list, I think it might be, I feel like I've heard the number 10,000 for creating a lookalike list. Obviously, that's very huge, and it can be done with smaller lists. I think the minimum in Facebook to upload a list might be 1,000. I'm not 100% sure on that number, but just keep in mind that the smaller your audience is, the less accurate your lookalike is probably going to be. So the bigger the list you can possibly have is better. And you can also create lookalikes off of socially engaged audiences. So say you have a ton of people that have previously socially engaged with your ads or your posts, you can create an audience of people that are similar to that, or you can create an audience of people that are similar to your followers as well, if you don't have a giant list.
And one more question, Elizabeth asked, going back to the offline conversion tracking in those lists, does it need to be campaign specific, or can they upload just a wider donor list for Facebook to cross-reference?
They can upload a wider donor list, but it's only going to match because the main thing to keep in mind for offline conversion lists is that really it's expanding our attribution window. So when iOS 14 rolled out, our attribution window dropped from 28-day click and view to 7-day click and 1-day view, meaning if I see an ad and I click on an ad, if I donate 8 days later, Facebook's not going to pick that up. But I'll be in the donor platform, somebody will upload that, and I'll still count towards that ad that I clicked on because it widens that attribution window and matches you. But for like a wider donation platform, I still would recommend doing that, but keeping in mind that it might not necessarily show you results, obviously, if they're not being attributed to those ads.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think another thing to note too is that not always people's donors' emails are the one that they use with Facebook. So it's never like a one-to-one match, but it definitely increases our accuracy.
Yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely. Cool. So the next aspect in audience targeting is to make sure that we're running ad sets with relevant messaging to people that have engaged with us before, and also retargeting website visitors. So these audiences are similar to each other with users who have either engaged with your site or your social media, but they're different in how we can approach them. So with remarketing website visitors, depending on your audience size, we can retarget to those that visited your website up to 180 days or narrow that down to only 30, 60, 90 days and so on. And then you can also, remarket specific actions that were taken on your website. So make sure to always be tracking those, even if it's not necessarily the goal of your campaign. If there's a section where somebody can sign up for something on your website, make sure you're tracking that, even if that's not your goal, because you can retarget people that take that action if you wanted to. And we can, with socially engaged, we can retarget people who've engaged in any form on social media for the last 180 days, including, 3-second video, 10-second video, post engagement or ad engagement, people that have sent messages, and now starting to have people that have previously donated to your page or previously started a fundraiser on your page. So these two types of audiences are really valuable within campaigns, because you can get more to the point of what you need or what your goal is without having to explain what your organization does like you would to interest audiences, because these people are familiar with your organizations. So these audiences get built and can be expanded through the interest and lookalike audiences. We touched on before if you needing to narrow it. So the last thing that we want to pay attention to when looking through our campaigns to make sure we're feeling good with how everything is reach. So what we mainly want to look for here is making sure that we can narrow as much as possible while not driving up frequency. If you're only targeting, if you were only targeting 100 people, obviously they would probably see your ad a lot unless you had a frequency cap, which you can only do on certain campaigns. So you want it to not be too narrow, but you also don't want it to be too broad, so that you're actually reaching the people that are going to drive the results that you want. So like we talked about earlier, 100 to 300,000 potential users is a really good place to start. So this is what the audience portion of the scorecard kind of looks like. This is, it has a little description for you, and then you can kind of give yourself a score and write down, what could be better? What do I want to change here? And the full scorecard has more sections that cover tracking, ad creation, budget, technical aspects, and more. So obviously it's really important to kind of go through this and think about how you're doing. But it's really going to be really valuable to really dive in deeper to your audiences and campaigns as well.
Yeah, and obviously these audits were only very high level and in detail for the audiences, but there's nothing better than just having someone like us dive in and actually seeing what's going on. So the next slide, you guys can always just fill out a form and we can have a strategy call in terms of seeing what's happening within it. But to answer Courtney's question, that's I'm sure very relevant. So with hybrid and in-person events, how far out, Jelena, should we start targeting people on social for the event?
Honestly, as far as possible, kind of. Not, obviously not, it depends on how big your event is. For example, we just ran a campaign that is for an event that went live today. We started running it August 1st. That one obviously had a huge budget. So it depends on your budget, but you also don't want to do it the week before, because the week before is way too late. Your campaign's not going to build any momentum. Definitely, if there's an event coming up, we ideally would like to start running ads at least a month before, just so that your campaign can go out of the learning phase and really that algorithm can start working and reaching the people that you're wanting it to reach. Because when campaigns are in the learning phase, they're spending more and not getting you the best results. So you want to give Facebook the time it needs to build that momentum to have a successful campaign.
Yeah, and I know some of our other team recommends, you said a month, and even like a month and a half minimum, because like we've talked about before, we want enough time to build up these audiences just with brand awareness and getting them engaged before we're just targeting all these people, asking them to join or to donate or to participate. And then another great question is, how much do we recommend for ad spend for Facebook ads? So a benchmark is like $500 to $1,000 per month on the platform. A great sweet spot's about $750. If you have more, even better. It's definitely a platform where you have to pay to play, but we think like a minimum threshold about $750. I don't know if you'd add anything in there, Jelena.
Yeah, I would say at minimum 500. I've definitely been building a lot of strategies, the past couple of weeks for some year-end strategies with budgets of only 500, and it just really limits on the amount of campaigns that you can run. You want to put as much spend as possible behind a conversion campaign, but conversion campaign is not going to be successful if you're not running those other campaigns that are filling that funnel. So at least 500, like you said.
And then another question is, how long do you recommend for each ad to run? I guess a better question, each campaign to run, since we run different campaigns.
So that really just depends on your goals and overall, if it's an event or not. We typically, when we're not in this time of giving, just kind of year round, we have these evergreen awareness or engagement campaigns, evergreen lead campaigns to get newsletter signups, evergreen, just ongoing constantly, obviously with creative refreshes and audience updates. But you know, sometimes campaigns are also just, they run for a month only. For example, for year end, you know, we're running the Giving Tuesday pre-wire campaigns are starting pretty much now, and they'll probably run until mid-November, close to Giving Tuesday. So yeah,
okay,
at least a month.
Okay. And a great question from Lisa is, you know, if organizations can't spend $500 a month, do we think that it's worth it spending $100 a month, or should they just save their money?
I think it's worth it depending on your goals. You know, you'll probably need to be more patient with building that funnel, because you won't want to abandon those initial campaigns just because you have a smaller budget. So you might need to spread them out more. So you might, you know, put $100 to build that engagement audience. And we run campaigns all the time where I'm running an engagement campaign for just this month, $100 for this month for that campaign only, and that's still worth it. And then, you know, the next month you can retarget to that audience and, you know, run a donation campaign. If 100's all you have, then you make it work, because it's still worth it to reach those people and to push that impact forward.
Great. Well, we loved all of these questions. We can give it a little bit if there's any last ones, but obviously, as Karen mentioned, you guys can feel free to fill a form and you'll connect with one of our specialists. Of course, we have some like baseline questions we'll ask you guys, and then you would be connected with someone like myself or another team member, and we would actually dive into your audit. We typically audit accounts that are spending about $500 or more, just because anything less, there's just really limited data. And we know that there's very specific questions within platforms. So of course, we'll try to answer as much as we can, but a lot of the annoyance is around tracking, which is very analytics based and something that we can't always answer or control. But regardless, please feel free to fill out that form, and we'll of course answer your guys' specific questions if needed.
Yep. And we have saved time for about 15 more minutes. So if you have questions, continue to drop them in the chat and we can hang out and answer anything you guys got.
Yeah, and Jessica's point was great. You know, any amount is definitely important. I think Jelena made a good comment to it. You know, even just $100, you know, just for, you know, pushing awareness campaigns is always helpful.
And you will be getting a recording. Look out for an email from me. I'll be sending a follow-up later today with a link to access this recording for the session. So you can watch it back at any time. It'll always be available for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining. Hopefully this was really helpful. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions at any time. Shoot me an email.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining with us on this Thursday afternoon or morning, depending where you're calling from. And yeah, we hope to see you again at one of our webinars or sessions.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Lots of thank yous in the chat.
Awesome.
Woo. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close down.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See you later.